Franklin's fur hat and Republican ideas are the rage of Paris high society. But this is not enough to sway the king. Now more than ever, he wants proof, hard proof in the form of military victories, that the 13 states can hold out against the British. Burgoyne's ships have just arrived at the southernmost tip of Lake Champlain. The lake does not connect with his next objective, the Hudson River. The British must now disembark and travel by land. Burgoyne's army of over 8,000 is a huge, unwieldy force. Half are British, half are German mercenaries, the notorious Hessians. Traveling with the army are 2,000 women and a large number of children.
It was a long-standing tradition for enlisted men, in order to keep them in the army, to be allowed to bring their dependents with them. The women in the camp did all the housekeeping chores. They cooked, they cleaned, they nursed, they foraged. They were essential in many ways for the survival of the army.
High-ranking officers and their families live in style. Baroness Frederica von Riedessel is traveling with her husband, the commander of the Hessian troops.
I sent back most of my baggage and have kept only a small summer wardrobe. As we were going to be traveling further, I had a small carriage built with seats for my 3 children and the servants. So we are traveling in the midst of the soldiers, who are merry, singing songs and burning with a desire for victory. General Burgoyne, he likes to make himself comfortable. He spends most of the night singing and drinking and cavorting with the wife of one of his officers, who is his mistress. She is as fond of champagne as he is.
One of the great mysteries of Burgoyne is how he thought he could carry both his army and all of the baggage and so many what seemed to us superfluous people with him down the back country. I mean, he had 30 carts with his personal possessions, including several cases of champagne and changes of clothing. It seemed totally inappropriate to this situation.
Burgoyne is moving through a vast wilderness. This is hostile territory. Every hill, every river presents unseen hazards. To guide him to the Hudson River, Burgoyne has recruited a force of Iroquois Indians.
Both sides, both the British and the colonials, were working for the participation of the Iroquois in the war, although officially they were supposedly urging the Iroquois to remain neutral and stay out of this white man's war.
When it came time for the Indians to choose between the Americans and the British, most Indian peoples found it easy to choose the British instead of the rebellious Americans. For generations, they had been living side by side with the Americans, and they didn't actually like the Americans very much. The Americans tended to move in on Indian lands without asking permission and without having a treaty. It was the British who had tried to keep this kind of land encroachment to a minimum or to eliminate it altogether.
Native American people fought for their own homes. They realized that if the colonists won, that their lands would be overrun. They had no great alliance or great support of the British government, but they realized that the British government was their only hope here in defending their homeland against the colonists. It was the lesser of two evils, but it certainly was the preferred choice.
Those Indian nations which joined the British have sent Burgoyne 400 of their finest warriors. They will be his scouts, the eyes and ears of the invasion. Only 23 miles separate Lake Champlain from the Hudson River. 23 miles of dense, primeval forest of enormous pines and maple trees. Burgoyne's mile-long train of carts, pulled by pack animals, must somehow hack its way through this seemingly endless wilderness. Geography becomes his worst enemy.
People back home can't imagine what this country is like. Hundreds of rivers and lakes. And a person can wander 1,000 miles without meeting another human being. The porcupines are the size of a small dog. Tasty when roasted, like a suckling pig.
Europeans had long since devastated their forests. So when they come to America, they see all of these trees. They're overwhelmed by the forests. There was no New York thruway to come down on. They had to hack their way through forests and trails. And it was a excruciating experience. It took them months.
The route must cross deep ravines, swamps and bogs. Burgoyne's soldiers must build 40 bridges and causeways, some over 2 miles long. Progress is excruciatingly slow, less than 1 mile a day. For the Hessians, this is their first taste of the American wilderness.
If I weren't here, I would have never believed that such a terrible place as this exists in the world. It's hot and sticky in the day, and at night it is cold and foggy. Last night we had thunderstorms with much heavier thunder and lightning than I've ever experienced in Germany. In camp we are constantly waging war against the flies. At night, snakes come visit us in our tents. I cannot describe how terrified I am of them.
In New York City, the other British general, William Howe, is loading supplies and 18,000 of his troops onto ships. Washington, with the main army in New Jersey, watches helplessly as Howe's troops set sail. On a clear July day, the Armada disappears over the horizon.
All he knew when Howe left in the fleet sailing out of New York Harbor was that Howe had gone out of New York. Where was he going to show up? Was he going to be at Philadelphia? Was he going down to Chesapeake Bay? Washington had to move his army to counter Howe. And he had men all along the eastern seaboard. He possibly might be going down to Charleston. He didn't know. But he had to keep his army mobile and ready to chase Howe to counter wherever he showed up.
Unable to spare any men, Washington makes an appeal to the New England militia to stop Burgoyne's advance.
Gentlemen, General Burgoyne's plan is to cut communications between the northern and southern states. He must be speedily and vigorously opposed. We are looking to your militia for support. Every motive of self-preservation, of liberty and happiness has a claim on your efforts. General Washington.